Passenger is a science fiction movie released in 2016. The movie is set in the future where a spacecraft named Avalon is on a 120-year journey to a colony planet called Homestead 2. The ship has 5,000 passengers and crew members who are in hibernation pods, and an advanced computer system that controls everything on board. The protagonist of the movie, Jim Preston, Chris Pratt, is a mechanical engineer who is one of the passengers on the ship. However, he wakes up from his hibernation pod 90 years too early due to a malfunction in the pod. Jim is alone and confused in the huge spaceship, with nobody to talk to and nothing to do. He tries to get help from the ship's computer, but it doesn't provide any assistance, as it is programmed to only respond to the crew. After a year of living alone, Jim becomes increasingly desperate and lonely. He contemplates suicide, but decides against it when he sees Aurora Lane, Jennifer Lawrence, a beautiful writer in her hibernation pod. Jim becomes obsessed with her, and after much internal struggle, he wakes her up by manually overriding her pod. Jim covers up his actions, telling Aurora that her pod malfunctioned too, and they are the only two awake on the ship. Aurora is initially furious at Jim for waking her up, and he tries to justify his actions. Eventually, they start to bond and fall in love. However, their happiness is short-lived when Arthur, Michael Sheen, a robotic bartender, reveals to Aurora that Jim had intentionally woken her up. Aurora is devastated and feels betrayed by Jim. Their relationship becomes strained, and Aurora avoids Jim as much as possible. Jim tries to make amends, but she remains distant. Meanwhile, the ship starts to malfunction, and Jim and Aurora realize that they must work together to fix it. They discover that the ship's reactor is failing, and they only have a limited time to fix it before the ship explodes. They manage to fix the reactor just in time, and the ship continues on its journey. However, their problems are not over yet. They discover that a meteoroid has damaged the ship's outer shell, causing a critical system failure. Gus Mancuso, the chief deck officer, wakes up from his pod and reveals that there is a bigger problem with the ship that they need to fix before it's too late. Hay must manually open the door to the ship's reactor room and vent the radioactive material into space to prevent the ship from exploding. Jim volunteers to do it, knowing that it is a suicide mission. Jim manages to vent the radioactive material into space and saves the ship and its passengers. However, he is exposed to a lethal amount of radiation. The movie ends with Aurora waking up from her pod on Homestead 2.
Passengers is a story about the consequences of loneliness and isolation, and the lengths that people will go to find love and companionship. It is a cautionary tale about the importance of honesty and the devastating consequences of lying to those we love. The movie is also a tribute to the human spirit and the strength of love, even in the most dire of circumstances.